Atheist Nomads episode 331, Monsters on Thanksgiving.
The podcast you're about to listen to includes cursing and talking about hoo-haws. Please be advised.
Welcome to another episode of Atheist Nomads. I am Dustin, and joining me is this episode's designated driver, Lauren.
I'm double D's. No, triple, quadruple.
Yeah, we canceled our Thanksgiving plans because of this massive storm that's coming, and I am disappointed about seeing my family. So Lauren brought me home even more Jesus.
And that's from what, Evans Gate Brewery?
Evil Twin Brewing.
Evil Twin Brewery. Yeah. It sucks when you have a whole thing planned to go see family, and you're going to be able to try your first fried turkey ever.
It wasn't going to be my first time with fried turkey.
Shut up. My first fried turkey. You know, we're both affected by this.
Oh, yes.
And then the news of this storm coming in just kept getting worse and worse. And it's like, okay, we should not be doing this.
Right. Saturday was 4 days out from travel, and the news looked bad. And bad means fine.
Bad means doable.
Bad means, okay, your 8-hour drive is going to be 11. Yeah, whatever. As
I was skeptical.
Gotten closer, it's gotten worse and worse and worse to where now it looks like our trip would have been 500 miles of blowing snow.
Yeah. So that it's disappointing.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah. So we aren't doing that. So yeah, Lauren brought home...
What sucks even more, though, is that it's Monday, and I just had to pull our turkey out of the freezer, which means it's not going to be thawed in time for our Thanksgiving. But I think we'll have it for Kylie's birthday this weekend.
Yeah.
Birthday turkey.
And we have fallbacks.
Yep, we've got friends and family. Friends-ish families. Family, they're like family. They're like my family.
Marcia is a friend of your family.
Our family.
But specifically, she is, she's Lauren's mom's college bestie.
And maid of honor.
Yeah, and maid of honor.
But what's funny is that when she called and left the voicemail message inviting us over for Thanksgiving, that was the second half of the message. The first half was, hey, I remember Kylie being born around this time. How's she doing? I want to see her. Oh, by the way, do you have Thanksgiving plans? I'm like, yes. We take the back seat to the 2-year-old. This is true.
Marcia was there when Kylie was...
She was.
Not exactly when Kylie was born, but about an hour later.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was important.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun.
All right. Since this episode is going out on Thanksgiving... Oh, the Monsters on Thanksgiving part is because we're going to be talking to... In the last half of the episode, we've got an interview with Steve from Monsters on Sunday, the band... about their new music video that's out and fundraising for their new album they're working on.
Nice.
So,
because apparently it takes a lot of money to produce an album.
A lot, yeah.
So, yeah, you guys rock.
Yeah.
Literally.
So that'll be in the last half. But before that, we have news, and we are going to start off with a localish one.
All right. Bring it on.
BYU, Idaho... has
the Mormon University, by the way.
Yes, Brigham Young University, Idaho, in Rexburg, which is a town that is so Mormon that most of Europe feels more American.
It's culture shock.
There are parts of Asia that feel more American.
So many blondes.
It is just freaky. But it's Mormon, and Mormons are Republican. And
yes, most of them are.
Yeah.
I am proud to be related to a minority of liberal Mormons. But.
You are related to nearly every single liberal Mormon.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah. There aren't that many. Listeners, yes, I know there is a certain percentage, just like there are in Adventism, but it's a small minority. BYU Idaho has announced that they will not be allowing students who are on Medicaid.
Now, if you go to any university, they require some kind of health insurance.
Yes.
And if you don't have coverage from your parents or from your job or whatever, you're required to buy the university's insurance through their health exchange thing. That's what I had to do at BSU. That's what everybody has to do.
That's what I did at Walla Walla. It was just a part of the tuition.
If you had Medicaid, then you didn't have to buy the school insurance.
Right, because you already had insurance.
You have insurance.
Yeah.
All your vaccinations and checkups and urgent care stuff is covered. Except for this particular university now. That's amazing.
So their timing on this is, the Mormon universities are on a weird schedule where the traditional academic year is completely split into two very distinctive halves with breaks every month. And it reminds me of my Adventist boarding school, high school schedule. It's weird, but they're telling students at the end of the fall term that they can't be on Medicaid when they come back for the spring term.
So mid-year, basically, for most people.
And what's changing, the critical timing on this, Medicaid expansion in Idaho goes into effect January 1st. It is open enrollment right now.
Yeah.
So they are telling students during open enrollment that they cannot sign up for Medicaid if they want to keep going to school there.
Yeah, that's twisted.
Yeah.
That's messed up, and it sucks because so many students fall in the gap where Medicaid didn't cover them before, and they have no way of being able to afford the stuff on the market or through the school. So this expansion is going to cover a lot of people who would normally qualify.
Now, Idaho Medicaid gap, the coverage gap didn't actually make sense in Idaho because the way Medicaid was set up and still is presently until the expansion goes into effect, if you are a single man, you cannot get on Medicaid, period. If you are a woman without children and not currently pregnant, you cannot get on Medicaid. The only exception on either of those is if you have cancer. You must be pregnant, have children, or have cancer, and be poor.
Yeah.
Or on disability. So it wasn't a gap because it wasn't just you needed to be poor to get it. It was you had to be poor plus something that excluded a lot more people than just you made too much money for Medicaid like it was in most states.
Yeah.
So the coverage gap here was horrific.
My brother.
Yeah.
Single dude, relatively healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But he does have bad asthma. He can't afford any of the medications for him. And he's not able to hold down a job very well.
Yep.
In a little college town. So I hope he's enrolling because this is for him.
Yeah.
It's people like that who just they're so poor they can't afford anything.
So
and they need it.
BYU officials said that they made this decision after consulting with healthcare providers in the area around them, and the healthcare providers concluded they couldn't handle Medicaid reimbursements for that many students.
Yeah, in Rexburg, it's going to be, I would say it's probably 50-50 that the population is student or over the age of 60. So you're already dealing with a huge population of people on Medicare, which has terrible reimbursement rates. And then you've got students, which, if they're on Medicaid, has even worse reimbursement rates. So
you get outside of that and you've got farmers.
And you've got these doctors who are barely scraping by and they can't afford to not get paid for the stuff that they do. I understand what they're coming from.
Except
they
didn't talk to the only hospital within 30 miles of the campus.
Just a couple of providers, some clinics.
Yeah, because the Fox 13 in Salt Lake, they talked to Madison Memorial Hospital.
Good old Madison.
To see if this was true, if they said this. And Doug McBride, the hospital's executive director of business development, acknowledged that BYU Idaho often consults the hospital on community matters, but did not talk to them about Medicaid.
Yeah, that's odd. It's almost as if they cherry-picked.
Now, the whole can't survive on Medicaid reimbursements, that is something I have heard. It is something that is claimed by city doctors. Rural doctors in Idaho are excited about Medicaid expansion because they'll actually get better reimbursements than their current indigent care.
Most of them get written off.
Write-offs.
Yeah.
So they're all excited about it. It's the more urban and medium-sized town doctors who want private insurance reimbursement rates so they can buy a Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are freaking out about it.
Or, pay for an even bigger office.
Yeah.
It's rural Idaho, which is a huge chunk of the population, will benefit from any kind of Medicaid expansion, which is why it managed to pass, even with our heavily Republican legislature.
Now, the only people who are really complaining about Medicaid expansion in the state of Idaho are Republicans in the state legislature.
Just anti-socialist.
And yeah, BYU Idaho officials are signing on to that hook, line, and sinker. It is purely partisan politics.
And that is affecting a university. That's a private religious university, but that still sucks.
It's partisan. It's a partisan political talking point. This is further proof that while we still have some semblance of separation of church and state, there is no separation between church and the Republican Party anymore.
Yeah.
There is no difference between evangelical, Mormon, and Republican talking points. They have all merged into one ugly mess of hate.
Yeah.
And it's fucking disgusting.
There's nothing else worth saying. But of course, I grew up in it, so I'm like, well, yeah, duh. Of course they're going to act this way. Anybody who's anybody in Eastern Idaho who runs a business is going to be as anti-socialist as possible because they want to keep all that money for themselves. They don't want to pay for some poor knocked up girl because she should have known better, or some homeless vet because he should just pull himself up by the bootstraps and go get a job. And that all correlates with, what they hear every Sunday.
Yeah. And the farmers, too. They're going to rail against socialist programs.
Even though they benefit greatly from them?
Yeah. Yep. Keeping with no separation between church and the GOP.
The GOP.
U.S. Energy Secretary Rick Perry, who is leaving his position at the end of the year. And this is a guy who...
God, I forgot he had a position like that.
Rick Perry, who is the guy who took over as governor of Texas from George W. Bush and served continuously until appointed to Secretary of the Energy by Donald Trump. 2000 to 2015 as governor.
No wonder Texas is so effed up.
Oh, excuse me. He did take a small break from policy because he's only been Secretary of Energy since 2017. He's not even Trump's first Secretary of Energy, and he is leaving at the end of the year. But he knows that when you leave the Trump administration, if you don't kiss Donald Trump's ass all the way out the door, he will turn on you.
Oh, yeah.
Quick. So Fox News has teased an interview that they'll be showing soon with Secretary Perry, where he says that Donald Trump is God's chosen one. He said, God's used imperfect people throughout history. King David wasn't perfect. Saul wasn't perfect. Solomon wasn't perfect.
Yeah, but they weren't evil either, were they?
He gave... Saul, according to the biblical stories, Saul was pretty evil.
Oh, okay.
Most of his reign. And so was Solomon. Yeah, actually, most of the story of Solomon was he and God were best buds, and then he got 700 wives and loved them and their gods all equally. And so God hated him. And then when he was about to die and was starting to lose interest in having 700 wives, he also lost interest in having 700 gods and went back to his God. And then everything was good. But he spent the vast majority of his reign as evil.
Okay.
Yeah. Wise, but evil. It's a bizarre story. And David was the guy who killed one of his best friends after he saw his best friend's wife bathing on the roof, and then raped her, got her pregnant, had him killed, and then married her. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But he gave Trump a one-pager on these Old Testament kings about a month ago about how they weren't perfect, but God still was able to use them. So he shared that with them. And he said, Mr. President, I know there are people who say that you were the chosen one, and I said you were. I said, if you're a believing Christian, you understand God's plan for the people who rule and judge over us on this planet and our government.
I like how he said, if you're a good Christian.
If you're a believing Christian, yep.
He's not. Hint, he's not.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Little loophole there.
Now, of course,
Wait, what? If he's leaving, what is he going to do? Is he retiring?
He's 69 years old.
Okay.
Which by boomer political timelines...
He's in his prime.
Means, he's in his prime and needs to run for president now.
Jesus. Old people.
Yeah. Well, he needs to rest up for 4 years to run for president. Starting his campaign to run in 2024.
Right, because you don't want to run against Trump after saying stuff like that.
Yeah. Now, of course, he also said that he believes that Barack Obama was sent by God. But that was for that moment and that time. But at this moment and this time, Donald Trump was sent by God to do great things.
Okay, yeah. Great.
Yeah, he's going with the approach of, which is actually pretty biblical which is actually pretty biblical out of Paul, that God chooses who rules, and if you are a good Christian, you will do what they say, because they are God's agent on earth.
Yeah, no.
It also means don't impeach God's chosen one.
Oh, good thing he's not a believing Christian then, huh? I've said this before. I feel bad for Republicans who are not Trump supporters, because they're not going to get anybody to go up against Trump in the next election. They're stuck with him. So, God, that sucks.
All right.
But if you want to elect another billionaire, you can switch over to the Democrats now.
Who have two now.
Oh, gosh. We got
Tim Stoyer, who's been running all along, and now Bloomberg.
Yeah. Yeah, but Bloomberg is like
I heard
insanely $8 billion.
The take I heard on it was he's testing whether or not you can buy the presidency.
You don't test that by jumping in at the end of or in the middle of the...
Oh, yes, you do.
Well, that's what Trump did, didn't he?
That's
why it was so surprising, wasn't it? He was a nobody, and then all of a sudden...
He didn't poll well and didn't perform well, but no, he'd been campaigning for quite a while at that point.
I'm just going to shut up.
Coming out of the Islamic world, we're going to start with Iran, where...
I run so far away.
Ali Mataria, who is the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, so pretty senior politician,
okay,
has demanded a national referendum on the hijab.
Okay.
As to whether to keep it compulsory or make it optional.
Oh, okay.
This immediately got loud protests from women who were pissed off at this asshole because he's trying to get a referendum to get the majority of men, who are going to be almost everybody that's voting, to say that the hijab must stay and give it a whole new level of legitimacy, and
it kind of finalizes it.
Yeah.
From the headline, it sounds like, oh yeah, this guy's, let's do it democratically. But when you don't consider who's allowed to vote, oh God, he knows exactly how this is going to go. And
not even necessarily just who's allowed to vote, but when you understand that they can control who gets to vote that time, they would be shutting down polling places in more liberal parts of cities and have extra morality police around all the polling place and harass every single woman who shows up.
Yeah.
And make sure that the only people who get to the poll are going to vote yes. Keep it.
It sounds like the future of America.
Yeah. And I do want to, of course, point out a awesome case of Islamic authoritarianism being a good force was 10 plus years ago when the Jordanian parliament voted to remove women's right to vote, and it passed overwhelmingly. The king vetoed that law that would have removed women's suffrage and appointed like 30 women to the parliament.
Yeah, that was awesome.
There are times, especially when you've got very conservative batshittery going on, that you need someone to keep people in line.
You need an adult. That's where the U.S. has gone wrong, is we don't have an adult in charge.
Nope. Professor Saoud Saleh from the Al-Azhar University in Cairo, Egypt, has said that rape is just fine if it's during a legitimate war between Muslims and their enemies.
Right. That's true with Christians, too, isn't it? Isn't there a...
No.
No, there's no clause that says you are allowed to rape the women of...
No.
Oh, well, I'm surprised.
No, it's a specifically Muslim thing that says that if you are at war and you come across enemy women who are pagans or polytheists or not Muslim or not the right kind of Muslim enough that you can say that they aren't Muslim, then you have an obligation to take them as slaves and rape them to humiliate them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's funny is on the Facebook page, somebody posted, fuck Allah. It's like, yeah, good point. The Quran's pretty screwed up. The religion's pretty screwed up. And somebody else responded is like, have you seen what U.S. Republicans say about rape?
Yeah.
It's like the weather. If it's going to happen, just relax and enjoy it. No.
Yeah.
God. Yeah. You know that people who say stuff like that are rapists. So there's that. But yeah, this is a person who's come out and said, during war, this is okay. It's like, no, it's not. And the fact that you've even said it means that you're guilty of it.
Well, he's at least endorsing what the Islamic State has done.
Yeah.
Which, unfortunately, the Islamic State is relevant again.
I thought Trump defeated them.
Yeah.
Sorry to keep bringing it back around to Trump, but God damn it.
He is really fucked up. It would be hyperbole to say everything, but he is fucked up a lot.
Yeah. Hey, he did at least show respect to a K-9 soldier, so
yeah,
there's that.
All right, hold on one second, and we can carry on. For one good story, happy news.
Yay!
Bring it up.
In happy news, I crocheted a chicken.
Northview Church in Indiana has paired up with RIP Medical Debt.
RIP?
Uh-huh.
That's awesome.
Yep. It's a New York-based organization, and they used $40,000 in donations to eliminate $7.8 million in medical debt.
Wow. And
this is for people across the state of Indiana.
That's awesome, but there's always this. If your debt is being sold off for pennies on the dollar, that's ridiculous, and you shouldn't be obligated to pay back that debt.
Yeah. When it gets written off, because when they're selling it for that much of a loss, they're writing off the balance.
But they're still going to harass you and ruin your life for that debt.
That should be all that's due.
Same with student loans.
Uh-huh.
If it gets sold off to some company in China for pennies on the dollar, you should not be obligated to have to pay that off, pay it back in full with interest.
I have a loan that, before I eventually got it refinanced, had been sold, I think, 3 times. I think at a bare minimum, if debt is being sold at a low amount, you should have dibs.
Oh, be able to buy back your own debt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And every single deal, like when they're ready to close on a deal, they should have to give you 30 days to come up with the money to pay that.
Yeah.
And buy your own debt. Because for $7.8 million to be able to be wiped out by 40,000, I think pennies on the dollar is an exaggeration on how much it is that's actually being spent.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous.
That shouldn't exist, and we've got to demand change. I I wish we could afford to just stop paying on those debts, because it's just like, I'm not going to give my money to this debt, which has basically been written off and is going to nobody. I want to be able to use that money to stimulate the economy. Think of how much money the government would save if they got rid of all that debt and allowed people to spend their money freely.
Actually, it works out to half a penny on the dollar.
Half a penny on the dollar.
Yeah.
Nice quick calculation there.
Yep.
Bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet a lot of those people who are struggling to make... Because, okay, anybody who has struggled to make debt payments at any time in their life has gone through the point where you figure out which ones you're going to pay and which ones you aren't, and then you build up some money so you can pay something that you need to pay when you need to pay it right then. People in that kind of a situation, given the chance when they're struggling and can't keep up with the payments, to come up with 0.5% of what's owed, could do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Who owns your debt right now anyway? Can we threaten them with a piece of paper with a lawyer's signature saying, I'm not going to pay this anymore?
Oh, actually, I had considered doing that and decided to refinance instead.
Okay.
Because the risk of them actually having the paperwork was too high. Because there is a thing where people have gotten away with not paying, like student loans that have been sold several times. And when they get taken to court, they show up and say, give me the documentation proving you have ownership. And they can't provide the documentation showing that they actually have ownership because a lot of these financial companies apparently have really sloppy paperwork practices, which is insane because it's finances, but they would lose money doing that because of how much they actually get paid back on.
Yeah.
And it's all weird when you start getting into that. Like I've heard some stuff where people are getting harassed for debts that they actually paid off, but a lot of these sales, they aren't actually selling anything tangible or even realistic. It's just a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
It's a spreadsheet with names and dollar amounts. Some people are getting harassed for debts that aren't even their own.
Tuh.
And taking collections for debts that aren't even their own. And it's all based on this weird market where stuff is being sold in really weird ways. And you can buy one of those spreadsheets for,
40,000. Wow.
And it's worth $8 million.
Yeah.
The whole system is fucked up.
RIP Medical. Should reach out to them. Do a fundraiser for them.
Yeah. Oh, man. Should give a shout out for Vulgarity for Charity, Scathing Atheist, and Cognitive Dissonance fundraiser for Modest Needs. Last I heard, they're approaching $100,000 and getting a $100,000 match. Something like that going on for something like this could literally wipe out millions of dollars in debt.
Yeah. And for whom? Usually the sickest people.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
And yeah, we usually cover stories where churches are doing bad stuff. This is a case where a church has done something amazing. Oh, and this actually isn't the first time they've done it. Their first one was $20,000 and they wiped out $2 million in medical debt.
Well, they have a counter on their webpage. They want to be able to eradicate $1 billion of debt by 2020.
Holy shit.
They're at $964 million and growing. They're almost there.
Oh, wow. So,
and the fact that this is just a tip of the iceberg just shows how effed up healthcare is in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. And joining me now is Steve from the band Monster on Sunday. Steve and his wife Tally were on the show back in 2016, 3 years ago, on episode 173. Welcome back.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
For listeners that aren't familiar with you, could you tell us a little bit about the band?
Absolutely. So Monster on Sunday, my wife and I, Tally, created this band. It's what we call an atheist hard rock band. We play music and really more about the lyrics is to reach people like us who are atheists and help them feel that they're not alone, and also to kind of normalize atheism and talk about a lot of different subjects that have to do with being a non-believer, especially in today's day and age when there's so many people that, especially here in America, still do believe, and there is a stigma, as I'm sure you're aware, with being an atheist.
Oh yeah.
And so a lot of our lyrics kind of deal with the personal side of being an atheist, and that's really where Tally comes from. Tally's the lyricist, and she writes the songs, and as far as the vocals, lyrics, and melodies go, and then my job is to write the rest.
Okay. And then you just had a release, the new music video, right?
Yes, we had a new music video from our first album. It was the song Stardust, which we dropped on Carl Sagan's birthday.
Very nice.
November 9th. And it's a song that celebrates our cosmic beginnings. It's basically about how we've all heard the term, we're all stardust. So it explores that. It explores, how really there's a line there about looking up into the stars. And a lot of people wonder, well, where did we come from? And when you're looking at the stars, there's your answer right there.
Mm-hmm.
And so nice. I put together the video. It was kind of a fun shoot. Basically what we did is we did it completely illegally. So I'm not going to tell anybody the exact location.
Okay.
But we did not pull permits first. I looked on Google Maps for a location that had a cliff. And if you're familiar at all with California, basically California, there's when you're doing anything on the beach, you're pretty close to Highway 1, which means that any cops or anybody that is driving by could see you shooting a music video. So I looked for a spot with like 100-foot cliff that was so far that nobody could see us. And then we just kind of got a bunch of our friends together and volunteers and ran down to the beach and shot the video in like 2 hours.
Wow. Nice.
And then it only took 2 years after that for me to get done editing it.
Only 2 years?
Only 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the editing the video part wasn't that difficult. It was adding the effects of stars exploding, supernovas and quasars and black holes and things like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. As somebody who does audio recording and editing, it's really easy when it's just spoken word, and as soon as you add anything else on top of that, it becomes super complicated and a ridiculous amount of work.
Exactly. Although really everything is based on audio once you start editing. I won't go too deep into that, but really,
yeah, understanding
audio editing is kind of the key to understanding video editing.
Yeah, I've definitely found that as well when I've dabbled with video. But sure. I've never bothered with anything like exploding star effects. That would be, that'd be some work.
Yeah, it was a bit of work. But it's fun though. It was just a crazy idea. First I asked for somebody who could do it, and then nobody I knew could do this kind of thing, and to hire it out would have been ridiculous. So I just learned how to do it myself, and then made it happen. So it was a pretty exciting challenge.
Nice. And you sent me over a couple MP3s from
right.
Dear Believer and Black Sheep. Those are both really good. And my daughter did enjoy those. Excellent.
And so what's going on with those is those are, we're sharing a number of these songs with the podcast that we're going on kind of after this video, but right before we go into the studio. So we're getting ready to record our second album. The second album is going to be called Black Sheep. And so that's the title track that we sent you. Basically, what you heard was the demo version. So that's before we go into the studio and actually record it professionally.
Okay.
And so Black Sheep is, again, kind of just, in a way, owning the idea that a lot of times when you're the atheist in your family, you're the black sheep, you're of the family.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what Tally wrote the song about. And it kind of takes that negative term and turns it on its head and owns it as something positive that we can all be kind of proud of. And that's kind of the point of it. And it's kind of the idea of the whole album. Now we've got 10 songs that we're going to record. And we're doing right now a fundraiser. So if you go onto our website, you can go to monsterunsunday.com/donate, and you can help us to raise the funds that we'll need to record that album. Right now, we've raised almost $1,000 towards our goal, which is pretty awesome.
Very nice.
And yeah. And so there's also rewards there. So as soon as we come out with the new album, people can get, pre-order signed copies of the album for doing donations, the new t-shirt that's going to be with the new album, or even like backstage passes to one of the shows that we do to promote the album when it comes out.
All right.
And then the other song you heard was Dear Believer. And that's really a lot. I don't know if you saw the video that Tally did probably a couple months ago. It was a very just raw video of her. It's called Angry Atheist 1, where she's just kind of venting about her family. And she goes through this maybe once or twice a year, where she has a really hard time with something her brother, her mother, or her grandmother says. And Dear Believer, that song is really kind of written towards her brother. And it's something I think a lot of people can identify with, where you have that pain of the rejection for something that just doesn't make any sense from somebody from your family, regarding religion and your non-belief.
Mm-hmm. So
it's a letter to that person, basically, in song form.
Yeah, and I know a lot of our listeners can relate to that. I'm pretty lucky with the family that I come from, that I was the last kid to become a black sheep. So yeah, I am definitely not the black sheep in the family. There are, so my siblings would definitely take that one.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been lucky in the same way. I did grow up Mormon, but my parents have been very accepting, and just they're wonderful people. So I haven't had the same type of family issues that like Tally has dealt with, but I do know that a lot of people go through that, and it's very difficult.
Yeah. And I was raised Adventist, and Mormons and Adventists have a lot of things in common. And one of it definitely seems to be that either you get completely rejected by your family, or they just don't care.
Yeah.
It's one or the other.
Well, not that they don't care, because my parents certainly care, and they're
true.
Certainly concerned. But
being cool, relatively cool with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. As cool as you could reasonably accept or expect.
Yeah. And yeah, that definitely does happen. I mean, a lot of people do get shunned and things in the Mormon religion for being different or believing different. And it's really tragic, but that is one of the things that belief does. We have another song that's going to deal with that in a more gnarly way. Is going to be called Faith Kills. And so I think we can all kind of guess from the title what that one's going to be about.
Well, okay, there's a few ideas on that one. Is it related to rejection and pushing people towards very tragic ends, or suicide bombers, or mass shootings? There's a lot of that going on now.
Yeah, there's a lot of all those things. So I think any one of those could apply. It's probably it's more geared towards, like the suicide bomber, mass shooting type of thing, but also, suicide as well. But definitely more towards the other ones. And, it's got kind of some of the sound effects that in it are going to kind of be reminiscent of, like, I don't know, missiles going off or something like that.
Mm.
So, because not only suicide bombers, but there's major wars fought in defense of faith. This is not just your average terrorist.
Yeah, definitely.
Governments definitely hijack this idea of faith and use it to kill. So that song it's there's a lot of different levels that you could interpret that song at. But that's kind of where it aims. Yeah,
and just took a look, and looks like you're trying to raise $20,000 for the album.
right?
That's pretty cheap for doing an album.
Yeah, actually it is. It may not sound like it to the average person, but that is pretty cheap. $10,000, we can have the album done. And then the other 10,000 is music videos, promotion, maybe tour support, basically. And you can do a lot nowadays, especially since the costs of recording are going down. What we're going to do is actually we've picked out a engineer / producer that we're really excited about. He's kind of local here, but he has recorded with bands like Evanescence and Slipknot and a number of other modern rock bands, and he actually has a Grammy for producing Evanescence.
Oh, nice.
And so we're going to be doing the album with him. And we've already sent him all the demos. He's really excited about the songs that we have. And so we think it's going to be a really good fit. His name is Jeremy Parker. So, the idea is to go to Premiere Studios and record it there. But I think we're going to get some really, really kick-ass results.
Yeah. Awesome.
But we definitely need some help. So if you're out there and you want to help us make this album a real thing, please go to our website and donate. You don't have the minimum donation for like a signed CD or something is $50, but if you can't afford that, you can always do something smaller, and we definitely appreciate any help we can get.
All right. And then with touring, have you done much touring before?
Not really. To be honest, touring is super expensive, and we just aren't quite at the level that we need to be to do much touring. So we do have a basic tour plan for when we release the album. And we may add more dates depending on the reception, but just to do basically Vegas, LA, and Phoenix for now as a little starter tour once we release the album.
All right.
And then we'll go from there depending on what the attendance is, basically.
See if it's worth the longer drives.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we do have a toddler, so every penny is accounted for. But we did play the Last Reason rally. We've played a number of shows like San Diego and a few other spots. So you can also check us out live online if you want to see kind of through YouTube what it might be like. But we're definitely going to just get out there and see what happens. I know that we have people constantly listening to our music all over the world. We send our CD and our album and our t-shirts everywhere throughout the United States, England, Russia, just Australia. We've hit most of the continents.
Nice.
So there's people listening to our music everywhere. But right now it's pretty spread out. There's not like I couldn't go to one city and be like, oh, I know we're going to have 100 people there at that show. It's just not quite there yet. So
yeah,
we just need to get the word out a little bit more and that kind of thing before we can actually realistically look at a major tour.
Well, and realistically, if you're doing the Venn diagram between atheists and people who like hard rock, there's a pretty decent overlap.
Uh-huh.
But finding somebody who'd want to go to that show would be a lot smaller.
Well, that's definitely a really good point. And that's, it's a niche within a niche. But we found actually here, right now we're living in Arizona, and we show our music to a lot of people. And I think something that we're going to try to do once the next album drops as well is play some mainstream shows, because we found that people that like rock music really like what's on our next album, regardless of their beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's opened up a lot of conversations for us, because actually the people that we've been showing, because right now we live in Prescott, Arizona, and practically everybody here is super religious. So the friends that we've been showing this to, one of them actually is in a Christian band, and he loved our music. And that we had some more friends that, they try to deconvert us or try to convert us every time. And, but we showed them our music and they love it, and they understand exactly what we're saying. So I think it's something I really want to try with this next album is to try a few mainstream rock shows and just see how that world responds to our music. And so far from my little testers has been very positive. And I realized that that's probably actually a more interesting way for us to go anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if you look at it, in hard rock, there's a lot of bands who move into kind of religious or religion-related topics, both for and against. And by the time you get into metal, there's a lot of just full-on intentionally sacrilegious stuff.
Yes, but here's a funny thing about it. So, like, say you talk about Slayer or whatever, the lead singer for Slayer is actually a Catholic. Mm-hmm. Dave Mustaine from Megadeth is a born-again Christian. Well, you have a lot of what's actually anti-religious music, and people confuse that with atheist music.
Yeah.
So when you have the anti-religious, they're basically like, oh, my God wouldn't do this, my God wouldn't do that. It's your religion that's causing all these problems, and your organized religion. And people confuse that for atheism. Whereas what Tally and I do is a little bit different in that we are anti-religious, yes, on the same lines as those metal bands, but we're also anti-theists. Mm-hmm. We're also, atheists. So our lyrics are incredibly different, and the message and the things that we're willing to say are very different from a lot of those bands.
Right, definitely. But while very different, I think the chances of getting a good reception on it would be pretty decent.
Well, I'm hoping so.
Yeah.
I think what we're doing with this next album is a lot of songs are going to be shorter than our first album, but they're also a lot more punchier. So they're shorter, but there's more going on, both musically and lyrically, in these songs. So I think musically, this album is really going to resonate with people, whether or not they agree with our message. And that is probably the most important thing in being kind of subversive. If you can get mm-hmm. people with the music, and they may not agree with your message at first, but eventually it starts to kind of grow on them. And that's kind of the idea of what I want to do with our next album.
Okay. Huh, nice. And yeah, with Black Sheep, that would be a pretty easy one that I think a lot of people could appreciate, whether they're atheists or not.
Actually, the two that I sent you are probably some of the more chill songs that we have in our album. Like Faith Kills is a little bit more on the metal side. We have another one that's Wake Up, which is full on metal. And then there's a wide variety in between. We're going to have another one also called G.I. Jesus, which is kind of, well, it was inspired by kind of the mass shootings. But ironically, I think people on both sides of the gun debate would enjoy that song for what it's worth, despite what it actually is meant to say, which is kind of, in a way, a good thing. Also could be a bad thing. I don't know. But
yeah.
But either way, we think the song's hilarious. Obviously, you haven't heard it yet because you just heard the two I sent you.
Yeah.
But
cool. And changing gears.
Sure.
If I'm remembering correctly, and it has been 3 years, I think the interview last time focused a lot more on Tally. But can you tell us more about your story? Growing up Mormon.
Yeah, I can definitely, absolutely. So, I haven't talked about it a lot, but I did grow up Mormon. I grew up in Vermont, which is not a place people think of Mormons, but obviously the members of the church are everywhere. Where I went to church was actually near Sharon, which is the birthplace of Joseph Smith.
Okay.
And so they have a memorial up there, and there's a tour center and things like that, very close to where I went to church, basically up the hill. I went on a mission as well for 2 years. And so I was one of those annoying guys that knocked on your door. And I also, while I was on the mission, I learned Spanish.
And where was your mission
at? It was in Tucson, Arizona, was the base of it, but it stretched to El Paso and down to the border. So I basically, when you're on a mission, you move around about every 6 weeks. Maybe you stay a place 6 months at the most. And so I had several different what they call areas where I would do that. And then it was probably several years after I was done the mission that I eventually just kind of stopped going to church. And I met Tally. And then, while we were dating, I did try to go back to church one more time. And it was just too weird. I didn't belong there anymore. And we started reading different books. One of which was, The God Delusion. The other one was God Is Not Great by, Christopher Hitchens. And pretty much once I finished those books, I realized that I didn't believe anymore.
All right. And backing up a little bit, why did you stop going?
So actually, like so many things in my life, it had to do with music. So I was playing in a band, and we were recording an album. And the most convenient time for us all to meet was on Sunday. So we just kept recording on Sundays, and I kept not going to church for about 6 months.
And that's enough to do it.
That was enough to do it. This enough to give me some perspective.
Yeah.
And when I did go back, I remember I was dating Tally at the time, and they were talking about the evils of sexual relations outside of marriage, like they always do, because it was what's called a singles ward. So here's some weird information about Mormons. About the time you turn 18 or 19, they stick you, if you're in an area that has enough Mormons, they'll stick you in what's called a singles ward. So there won't be any families. It'll just basically be people between 18 and early 30s that are trying to get married.
Mm-hmm.
And they all meet together on Sunday. So I was in Tucson, Arizona. There was enough Mormons. They actually met on campus at I can't remember the University of Arizona. That's what it was. And so basically half of this is the crazy thing about religion, especially Mormonism. All right. So they're trying to get you all to get married off,
mm-hmm.
so that you can now have kids. But because you're singles and you're not supposed to have sex yet, basically every Sunday meeting, there is at least a half an hour devoted to why you should not have sex before marriage.
Oh, wow.
But, and so, I hadn't been there for 6 months. I was dating Tally. She has been an atheist for forever. So you can imagine that I was not heeding that advice anyway. And then when I did sit in it, I had zero guilt, about this. I was like, this is awesome. And so as soon as they started to go down that path, I realized that this is not true. This does not make any sense. I still would not have called myself an atheist yet at that point, but I knew that I did not belong in church. And that was really kind of the first inklings of awakening for me, that what they were saying was bullshit. It just didn't add up. I didn't feel it anymore. This did not make sense to me, and I did not belong there.
Yeah, taking all those single adults and putting them together. That's just asking for it.
And you do events too. So it's not just Sundays. You do like Saturday get-togethers or Wednesday night get-togethers. So you're always hanging around the same meat market of people that you're not supposed to have sex with.
Yeah, and I'm going to guess it's probably not a huge group of people, just enough to try to make it awkward.
Just enough to make. Well, it was over 100.
Oh, okay.
Maybe around 200 people.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, there was some options, but basically once you'd gone a couple of weeks, you knew what all your options were.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it kind of felt like high school. Like, some people date in the same high school, but most people, want to go outside and meet somebody else. Everybody there, and they're weird. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
But yeah.
Okay.
But
yeah, the the way Mormons do, well, basically everything is just weird.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. It's so true. But yeah.
But to be fair, you compare that to, say, Adventists, and they don't have singles wards, they have colleges everywhere. And
yeah,
if you don't get married in college, then, well, odds are you aren't going back to church anyway. That's just the reality of how it is for them. So they hope that you'll get feel same. Yeah, they hope you'll start feeling guilty by the time you have kids and go back to church then.
Which, yeah, no, that's not happening. Of course, as you know, we have a Braid. She's almost 4 now, so that's definitely another interesting aspect of our life is figuring out how to raise him, without religion. Not that that's a difficult thing, but once you do have a child and you see how people treat you when you're not religious, not that they treat you as bad or anything, but just they're very confused. They're very confused that you can have a child and not teach him about God and Jesus and morality in that way. And so,
where are you running into people that are confused?
Here where I live in Prescott, Arizona.
Okay.
I think also probably the bigger thing would be our parents.
Oh, okay.
For sure. They do not really understand in that way. I mean, like I said, there's, my parents are supportive. But I remember we showed some of our songs to Tally's mom, which we do. And it kept her up all night just thinking about the fact that Braid was living in this house where these songs are going on. And maybe I'm reading into it, but the lack of Jesus in his upbringing and that kind of thing. And there also is since we've had Braid, my parents, well, where are you going to teach him his morals and things like that? And so that's definitely probably more than anything is just the family not really understanding.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm lucky in that regard with my family where my brother got to run interference and all of that.
Yeah. Well, we're figuring it out, but
yeah. And I've got a niece who's a teacher now and one who's a disabled veteran. So they've a nephew who's a disabled veteran, and families figured out that, that's not hard. It's not hard to grow up without religion and still have morals and values and be a decent person.
I agree. Yes. I wish I had something smart to say right now, but that's pretty much the end of it.
Yeah.
It's easy. Well, I do have something to say actually, and this is something that bothers. There's 2 things that bother me. All right. So one is just the general idea of morality and religion that people get there. Well, where do you get your morals from? Well, something that I've been saying is that when you have religion, if you truly believe that your morals come from either the leaders of said religion, or B, the Bible, then you don't actually have morals. Mm-hmm. If that's really where you get your morals from, then you do not have morals. You have an authoritarian idea of morality, as in what these leaders from the church tell you is moral, is what you're going to believe is moral, whether you believe it or not. Or what the Bible tells you is moral is what you're going to believe is moral, regardless of how you feel about something. Whereas when you make your own moral decisions based on the information that you have or how you feel about something, at least you may not be making the right decision all the time. At least you are deciding based on your own morals and your own values. So I think that's a very key difference that,
oh yeah,
that I feel and that I want to instill in my child is teaching him to understand his own moral values. They might not be the same as mine, but at least he'll have his own values that he understands based on his understanding of the world, and not some authoritarian sense of values, which I think has nothing to do with morality.
Right. Well, and you and I both know that's more realistic, since in both of our cases, we rejected the authoritarian moral models that we were raised in.
Absolutely.
So if you just tell somebody what to believe and value, they can reject it and figure it out on their own, or you can teach them how to figure that out, and hopefully they'll have an easier time working through that process.
Yeah. And that, I think that lends to a real conversation and a real understanding of how to think and how to understand the world in a moral way. So, but that's what bothers me is that people act like religion has some sort of moral monopoly when I think it's morally vapid. That was, I guess, the crux of my point.
Yeah. All right. So where can people find you?
So they can go check us out. If you want to see the music video we just came out with, you can check that out on YouTube. Just look up Monster on Sunday. You can
link will be in the show notes.
Stardust video. Cool. It'll be in the show notes. Also, if you want to support us, you can go to monsteronsunday.com/donate. You can also, if you just want to get merch and things like that, you can go to our website and go to the store. And then you can follow us on Facebook. We're going to be updating pretty much everything that we're doing for the next album here and there on Facebook or on YouTube. So really, if you're following Facebook and YouTube, you're going to see all of the latest that we're doing, as in going into the studio, where we're at with our fundraiser, what podcasts are going on, and things like that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
We heard from a friend who is a patron and listener that we have been sounding less than enthusiastic about podcasting the last few episodes.
Yeah.
So I feel really bad about that.
I felt worse when it was said to me, and I had no response other than I know. And it sucks. It sucks when you need to get an episode out and you're not feeling great. And unfortunately, this is that time of year where that happens a lot more often.
Okay, so there's a couple factors that are at play. One is,
or as I like to call them, the excuses.
Our illness a couple weeks ago.
Seriously, I had friggin' food poisoning one weekend, and then probably influenza the next weekend.
Which I did as well.
We both did, and we still managed to get a freaking episode out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane that was even... This man, Jesus, he is dedicated. But and then I've been dealing with tons of fatigue issues where by 8:30 at night, I'm dead. I'm brain dead. So I haven't been able to help out much.
And since Erin quit her co-host role, I have had to
go on to do fantabulous things, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
She doesn't listen to the podcast, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, she doesn't listen when she's on.
Oh, that's true.
All bets are off when she's not on.
Who knows?
No. I'm not saying anything bad about her with leaving, but when she left her role with the podcast, I have had a hard time getting back into scheduling guests. Not that it's time consuming, and it's been difficult to find the right time to do that. And daylight savings time ended, and fuck daylight savings time. With a toddler, your month is shot.
Yeah, toddlers and dogs.
And if you've got both, it's not just a couple days or a week. No, your month is gone. I was thinking about it today and shocked that, wait a minute, this is Thanksgiving week. Where the hell did July go?
Yeah.
I don't remember other months.
I don't remember August. What? It's weird. Yeah, it's been weird.
Yeah. And I've heard plenty of babies killing podcasts. There are colicky babies that are really tough, but infants like Kylie are a piece of cake, because as long as there's a nipple in that baby's mouth, that baby is fine.
Sleeping for hours.
Toddlers are different.
Toddlers are monsters.
adorable, lovey, awesome,
destructive, loud,
yeah,
and demanding monsters.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a lot harder since Kylie's been much more rambunctious. She's turning 2 this week.
So yeah, we've been recording late in the evening more often, and that is a lot harder when it's after work and after Lauren's been up all day taking care of Kylie. We're exhausted, and it shows, and I need to work better on getting more guests so that there's at least somebody who's not as tired as we are on the show.
Somebody fresh.
Now, unfortunately, our with the interview, and the interview is great, it gets pretty weak by the end when I actually had, it was, the interview is great, and we were going really strong right up until the point both of our brains shut down.
Yeah, because the person you're interviewing also has a child, right?
Yep. Who was in the process of being put to bed.
Yeah.
I had just put ours to bed. And
that decompression that happens after you successfully get a kid down for the night is debilitating.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing that's saving Dustin right now, I think, is the beer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's...
even more Jesus.
This can has gotten really light.
Oh, geez.
I think this can could walk on water.
I think that can suffers from daylight savings time. What happened to that last 4 ounces? What? It's just gone.
Yeah. But when it really comes down to it, I just need to get back into the habit of scheduling people.
Yeah.
When it's scheduled, we make it work.
It's really something that I should be able to do, and I just have never been able to do it. Sorry, but not sorry, because it sucks.
You're stuck dealing with a toddler all day.
Yeah.
That's hard work.
Hey, I found somebody right across the street from us who's willing to come over and talk.
Have you scheduled anything yet?
See, I told you that I'm not very good at that part.
And I've never said more than hi.
Have you ever said hi to Chad?
Yeah.
He has a name, you know.
Yeah.
He likes woodworking. You guys could actually be buddies.
I've seen him work on
All right.
stuff. I've never had a conversation with him.
He worked at the Atheist comedy show as a bartender.
Oh.
I got that from not even 5 minutes.
That is more than I've talked to him combined.
Ever. Yeah, that's true. You're a terrible neighbor.
I am, yeah.
Oh, man. You're a hermit.
Yes.
A little wannabe hermit. Is that why you liked hermit crabs growing up?
No.
Did you identify with a hermit crab?
No. It is one reason why I'm glad I married into a family with a cabin.
Yes. Cha-ching. Oh, man.
The work is worth having a place to hide.
Yes.
If there was better internet access there, I wouldn't leave it in the summer. Because I could work from not work from home, but work from the cabin.
That would be amazing.
Anyway.
Thank you for expressing your concern about our fatigue and downheartedness. It's just going to get better.
Yeah.
I think until, the next strain of influenza comes through.
Or whatever viral infection gave us 102 and 103 degree fevers.
For 3 days.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh, that was hell. All right. So, listeners, happy Thanksgiving. And remember, not all those who wander are lost. Thank you for listening to another episode of Atheist Nomads. You can find show notes and contact information at atheistnomads.com. Follow us on Twitter at Atheist Nomads, and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/atheistnomads. Please subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcatcher of choice, and while you're there, feel free to leave us a review. Theme music is courtesy of Sturdy Fred. Until next time, this has been the Atheist Nomads. Feels like my brain just shut down.